Perhaps you still remember that with just a US passport, you could cross the border as easily as walking into an old friend's house. No one asked too many questions, no complicated paperwork. The world opens up to you with a smile, but in 2025, things were different. With the same passport, but now in Brazil, you need a visa. In Spain, they require proof of bank accounts. In Indonesia, just one wrong hashtag can get you deported. And in Japan, a vague itinerary is enough to get you rejected right at the door. It's not because of major conflicts. It's not because of the pandemic. And that's because they don't want to favor you anymore. From VIP guest, you suddenly become an ordinary tourist. After all, what has made the world's most powerful key now become so difficult to obtain? In this video, we'll explore countries from retirement havens to cultural destinations that are quietly changing how Americans are treated. This is not a video calling for a boycott or attacking any country. We are simply analyzing a real socioeconomic phenomenon that is occurring with all the data and stories collected from both sides of the border. Let's explore before your next trip becomes a denied one. There was a time when you could just book a ticket and say, "Hello, Brazil." No need for cumbersome paperwork, no need to wait. But now it seems the door has been locked. On April 10th, 2025, Brazil will reinstate visa requirements for US citizens after more than a decade of opening up freely. That means if you haven't applied for a visa beforehand, you'll be denied boarding right at the airport, even if you've already bought your ticket and booked your hotel. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. It caused hundreds of flights to be cancelled at the last minute. According to data from travel agencies, at least 30% of US tours to Brazil in the second quarter of 2025 have been cancelled because customers did not have time to complete the new procedures. Many couples cancelled their honeymoons and many groups of friends lost thousands of dollars on trips that never happened. Do you understand? Just one policy change and the entire plan collapses. On paper, Brazil says this is reciprocal. If the US requires visas for Brazilians, then Brazil will also require visas for Americans. But if you ask the people of São Paulo or Rio, you'll hear different stories. We've been waiting for this for a long time. That's only fair. They came here easily while we were made to struggle in America. And so the door of friendship became the door of equal partnership. There was an uncle in Texas who recounted, "We planned all year for our 30th wedding anniversary trip to Rio. I didn't know anything about the new law until I got to the airport and was stopped. We went home feeling like we had just lost a dream. This is no longer a travel story. It's the feeling of losing control in a place that once welcomed you like family. If Brazil does that, will Argentina, Chile, or Colombia follow suit? A wave of visa fairness across South America and US passports will no longer be a golden ticket in this region. Imagine your US passport is a key. In the past, it could open hundreds of doors. But now with Brazil, that key tooth is broken and the door won't open easily anymore. If one day you were stopped at the airport and your lifelong plans were ruined, how would you react? And do you think Brazil is doing that fairly or sending a different message? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment below this video. And if you think Brazil is just an exception, wait until you hear the story of Spain, where the beaches are still golden, but before you hit the sand, you have to overcome a banking barrier. For many Americans, Spain is not just a destination, it's a retirement dream. Warm winter, excellent cuisine, and the cost of living is much more affordable than at home. But in 2025, that dream had wings with a back door right in front of it. Previously, to apply for a non-lucrative visa, the most common visa for Americans who want to live long-term in Spain, you only needed to prove you had around euros 35,000 in your account. This year, that number has nearly doubled, euros 60,000. And if it's not enough, your request will be denied no matter how much you love Spain. In 2024 to 2025 alone, 40% of US citizens' applications were rejected. And this isn't just a dry number. Those are closed plans. The houses were put down payments on, but no one ever moved in. The suitcases were ready but were never loaded onto the plane. The Spanish government says this is to ensure the financial capacity of visa applicants. But if you hear stories from Valencia or Barcelona, you'll see a different trend. Rental homes are skyrocketing in price. Local people cannot afford to rent the place where they were born, and they believe that wealthy foreigners are partly to blame. The phrase rich foreigners appears more frequently in the press and on social media. A couple in Florida shared, "We sold our house and planned to move to Valencia to enjoy our retirement. But when the new regulations were issued, we didn't qualify. Now I've lost both my home and my dreams." For them, Spain is no longer a place for twilight romance, but a dream locked in a safe. If Spain does that, will Portugal, Italy, or Greece follow suit? The entire Mediterranean could become a private resort for anyone who passes the bank test. The Spanish beach is still golden under the sun. But now, to stay there for more than a few weeks, you have to overcome banking hurdles, and these hurdles are getting higher and higher. What do you think? Is Spain protecting its people, or is it gradually closing its doors to those who want to call this place home? But if you think Spain is just raising the bar, wait until you hear the story in South Korea, where you can't even board a plane without a tiny electronic document called key. In 2025, want to enjoy kimchi and stroll around Seoul. First, you have to go through a new door, and it's smaller than you think. From 2025, all American tourists will be required to obtain a key, an electronic travel authorization, before boarding their flights. It sounds simple until you realize just one slightly blurry passport photo or a hotel booking missing the checkout date is enough for your application to be rejected. Since the key was implemented, over 22,000 applications from US citizens have been rejected. And refusing here doesn't mean processing a few days late. But they were stopped right at the check-in counter, ticket in hand, suitcase already checked, but unable to board the plane. Do you understand? The entire trip was summed up in an email saying application denied. The government says this is to manage tourists more effectively. But if you ask many Koreans, you'll hear something different. We want to preserve our culture, protect our community, and select our visitors. It's not about opposing America, but clearly it's no longer open to everyone. A retired teacher in Oregon shared, "We've dreamed of a trip to South Korea for years. Everything is ready. Plane tickets, hotel, DMZ tour. But the KTA was rejected because the passport photo was out of focus. We could only look at each other and cancel the trip." Not everyone can board a plane, even if they have followed the correct procedures. Some people think, well, just ask again and it'll be done. But the truth, the review process can take several weeks, and if your trip is only a few days away, you're out of luck. If South Korea does that, Japan or Taiwan might follow suit. East Asia, which was once known for being easily accessible to American tourists, is now erecting new screening barriers. The red carpet at Incheon Airport is still there, but instead of spreading out to the door, it curled up and only opened for those who were pre-approved. Would you accept being rejected just because of a blurry passport photo or a small error in your application? And is this cultural protection or the beginning of a trend towards closure? If South Korea is only lightly locked down, the next country, Japan, seems to be quietly making things difficult, even for long-time visitors, and they do that without changing the law. For many Americans, Japan embodies respect and safety, a country where a smile and a slight bow can bridge any gap. But in 2025, that smile is still there, only the door is slowly closing. There were no noisy new laws, no grand announcements. But an increasing number of American citizens are being questioned closely or denied entry, even with valid documents. Common reasons given are that the schedule is too vague or that entry is too frequent. In some cases, they were even required to provide a detailed explanation of each day of their stay right at the immigration counter. An American travel blogger said, "I've been to Japan many times and never had any trouble, but the last time I was held up at Narita for over 2 hours. The staff asked for details where you were each day, who you met, and what you did. When I said I wasn't sure, they looked at each other and took me to a side waiting room. I was still allowed to enter, but that feeling is something I'll never forget." Since mid-2024, Japanese immigration lawyers have noted a sharp increase in the number of unofficial entry denials. At the same time, some surprising events occurred. For example, the story of an American tourist arrested in Tokyo for painting graffiti on a temple gate. This image appeared in newspapers everywhere, sparking a wave of debate about cultural respect. You might think just prepare a clear schedule, and you're done. But here, sometimes the reason for rejection isn't explained. A stern look, a shake of the head, and you'll be invited onto the return flight. If Japan has become so cautious, other East Asian countries might follow suit, and those fly-in, fly-you trips won't be as common anymore. The tea ceremony still smells fragrant, the cherry blossom scent still floats, but the teacup has become smaller, only for those who prove they are worthy of being invited. Do you think Japan is being overly sensitive? Or is this how they're protecting their country from the influx of tourists? And if you've ever been to Japan, was your entry experience as easy as before? Japan only took a slight step back, but in the tropical paradise of Bali, Indonesia, they're not just pushing back. They're kicking you off the island if you make a single misstep. One wrong hashtag and your ticket back to the US will be in your hands. It wasn't a round-trip ticket that was bought, but a reluctant one-way ticket with no return date. Bali was once a paradise for Americans who loved warm sunshine, freedom, and low cost of living. But in 2025, the Indonesian government tightened its unprecedented surveillance of international visitors, especially digital nomads and long-term residents. They monitor social media from Instagram Reels to TikTok to find people who are not complying with their visa. And if they're caught working on a tourist visa, they'll be deported immediately. In just the first 3 months of 2024, 211 American citizens were deported from Bali. Many violations just because they stayed a few weeks too long or posted workation clips without a work permit. Do you understand? A social media story can turn a vacation into a short, embarrassing trip. The people of Bali are all too familiar with American tourists arriving and behaving as if they were at home. Rent prices are rising. Cafes are packed because nomads work all day, and music and parties go on all night. The government wants to send a message. We still welcome you, but we will not tolerate self-entitlement. An American freelancer recounted, "I live stream my work from a seaside cafe." A few days later, 2 immigration officers came to the hotel door. I didn't understand what was happening until they gave me the deportation papers just because I don't have a work visa. It all happened in a week, and the Bali dream vanished like sea foam. You might think as long as I don't show off online, I'll be fine. But in reality, they also receive complaints from the public, neighbors, landlords, and even other nomads. If Indonesia has been so forceful, Thailand or the Philippines could easily adopt similar measures. At that time, Southeast Asia, once a haven for free-living Americans, will become a region requiring strict permits. The beaches of Bali are still green and the waves still crash gently, but beneath the soft sand are invisible traps, and just one misstep and you'll be swept out to sea. Do you think the Bay Line's government is being too strict? Or are they justifiably protecting their environment? And if you're in Bali, would you dare to post your work online? But if in Bali, you're only scrutinized on social media. In Turkey, a Facebook status or a tweet could lead to you being interrogated right at the airport. You can enter Turkey without a visa, but don't be quick to think that all doors are open. Because here, sometimes what gets you into trouble isn't paperwork, but words. In recent years, some American travelers have been called back at the airport or invited into interrogation rooms because of content they shared online. Some are regular social media posts, some are tweets, even a regular TikTok clip. But they accidentally touch upon sensitive topics. No one calls it a ban, but being held in question for hours is not a pleasant experience, especially when you only intend to travel. Human rights organizations and international tourism forums have documented numerous cases of foreign visitors, including US citizens being questioned about their online activity upon entry. There's no official list, but the story is being shared more and more. From solo travelers to groups of elderly tourists on tours, The Turkish government is tightening cybersecurity controls and paying more attention to content related to politics, society, or culture. Not aimed solely at American citizens, but the US is often among the most prominent tourist groups, and therefore also more easily noticed. A retired teacher from California shared, "I'm visiting Istanbul for the first time, and I'm incredibly excited. But at the airport, they asked me about a post I wrote months ago. I explained everything is fine, but that feeling made me think a lot." No one thought the text on their phone screen could stay with them all the way to the immigration gate. You might think I didn't write anything wrong, but here the standards of sensitivity are different. What you consider normal might be viewed very differently elsewhere. If this trend spreads, international travel will not only involve checking passports and luggage, but could also scrutinize your digital baggage. In Turkey, the border wall isn't on the border. It could be on your news feed. Have you ever thought about how what you post on social media could affect your trip abroad? And do you think this is a justified protective measure or a new barrier for tourists? If you're in Turkey, what they pay attention to is what you say. Well, in Argentina, what stops you is a new entrance ticket, which is a visa. Argentina was once one of the easiest destinations for US citizens in South America. All it takes is a plane ticket, a few clicks to book a hotel, and you can immerse yourself in tango, Malbec wine, and charcoal grilled barbecues. But now that Open Ticket is closed, in 2025, Argentina officially reintroduced visas for US citizens, ending over a decade of visa-free travel. If you want to come here, you now have to apply, wait for approval, and pay fees before you can set foot on the ground. No more booking in the morning and flying in the evening like before. The Argentine government explains that this is a reciprocal measure because the US still requires Argentine citizens to obtain a visa upon entry. But beneath the surface lies a different reality. The highest inflation in the region. Economic pressure weighs heavily on people's lives. A cautious attitude towards wealthy tourists or those who visit but don't integrate much into local life. The people of Argentina are still hospitable and warm, but the government wants to ensure that the visitors coming here are people who are truly committed to respecting and connecting with the country, not just passing through briefly. You might think it's just another visa, but the problem is the procedures aren't always fast. For short-term trips, this requirement almost eliminates the possibility of flying to Argentina on a whim. Something many American travelers once considered a privilege. If Argentina does this, neighboring countries that were once friendly like Chile and Uruguay could completely consider a similar move. And then South American journey will become a series of locked doors. The tango is still captivating. The wine is still strong, but to enter the dance floor, you now need a special ticket, and that ticket is no longer free. Do you think this is a fair decision or a sign that the era of opening up to American visitors has come to an end? And if you had to apply for a visa, would you still put Argentina on your travel list? Argentina's closing the door that was once wide open. But right on the southern border of the United States, Mexico, a familiar neighbor is also showing they are not as easygoing as before. Mexico, America's closest neighbor, where many consider it their backyard. A short trip that doesn't require much thought. But in 25, even this familiar door won't be as wide open as it used to be. American tourists can still enter Mexico much more easily than many other places. But some border states have begun to tighten the length of stay for American visitors. Stricter security, checks at major border crossings. Cases of incomplete or ambiguous declarations may be required to turn back on the spot. According to reports from border travel agencies, the number of American tourists asked for additional documentation or denied entry has increased significantly in the past 12 months. The main reason is largely due to concerns about border security, economic pressure, and the uncontrolled growth of short-term tourism. The desire to maintain order and safety at tourist hotspots, a family from Arizona shared. We drove to Baja for the weekend, just like we've done for 15 years. But this time they asked very carefully where for how long. What purpose? When they heard we hadn't booked a hotel yet, They advised us to go back and prepare more thoroughly. The vacation turned into a drive back home. Mexico wants to show visitors that they must respect community rules and safety. And in a complex socio-economic context, even close neighborly relationships need clear. You're right. The surprising thing is even tourists who have entered and exited Mexico many times without any problems are now feeling this change. That thoughtless habit has become a mandatory preparation step. If even Mexico, the closest neighbor, has started to screen, this trend could spread rapidly across the Americas. And at that point, a US passport will no longer be a priority pass in its own region. The back door, which you used to go in and out of at any time, now has a new lock. It's not hard to open, but you need the right key. What do you think? Is Mexico doing what's necessary to stay safe? Or is it sending a signal that even its neighbors need to recalculate? From Brazil to Mexico, 2020-25 is revealing an undeniable truth. The freedom of movement that Americans once took for granted is changing. It wasn't that the doors slammed shut immediately, but rather that new locks were appearing everywhere. And the question is, are you ready to carry that new key? From Brazil to Mexico, we have seen one truth. The door to the world is still open, but the lock has changed. And the US passport, once a golden ticket, is now just a conditional invitation. It's not the world turning its back on Americans, but they want people who come to be better prepared, more respectful, and more integrated. And if not, you'll find yourself standing before a door where the key no longer fits as snugly as it used to. Is this just a fair adjustment or a sign that the red carpet era is over? Please share your story or experience in the comments section. Have you ever had difficulty entering a country? And which country do you think will be the next door to change the lock? And if you're wondering, so which countries still welcome Americans with open arms? Please click subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. This video is made for general travel information purposes only and is not legal or official advice. Entry policies of countries can change at any time. Always check the latest information from government sources or embassies before planning.